This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USAPrepares.com. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
I am blissed, then.
Hey, Dr. Shealy, I wanted to thank you so much for being with us at the Get Prepared Expo in July 19th and 20th. So many people have commented they really enjoyed meeting you. It was a great experience. I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, it was fun for all of us. Thank you.
Dr. Shealy, I am traveling I'm currently in Virginia, and I've put together a real quick studio. So I'm broadcasting with not in my normal environment. So I wanted to share with you. I happen to be in a neighborhood right now. I'm broadcasting from a residence, and it's a nice neighborhood. It really is. And when I got here, I felt a headache, and I said to Mrs. Finelli, as we rounded one of the corners, I said, geez, there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation in the air right here. And she looked at me like she didn't feel it the way I did. And I said, no, it's really strong, and it's really here. We rounded a couple more corners, and then I could see this great big 300-foot antenna off maybe about 2 miles in the distance. Jeez. So, and then yesterday, I was driving around the same area. I went in the opposite direction, and there, 2 miles on the 180 degrees away from the first antenna is another antenna 300 feet tall. So I found out that the first antenna was used by the state police, so they want to make sure that signal gets out far and wide. It must be a dispatching area. I'm near Fredericksburg, Virginia. So there's an enormous amount of electromagnetic activity in the area. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I hooked up one of my computers in this particular residence, and I normally don't use Wi-Fi or wireless communications. I found no less than eight wireless networks in this house that I can attach to. Now, there's only one wireless network in this house, but the other 7 are from the neighboring houses, and I can pick up any one of them. And the houses have about a half an acre each. What I'm saying is, Dr. Shealy, there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation that we don't even think about.
Well, you're noticing it. Now, how far are you from D.C.?
Probably about 2 hours, so let's say...
you're quite a ways.
Yeah.
Well, D.C. is the worst place in the country, in my experience. When I enter there, I feel as if I am under not just psychic attack, but physical attack by the electromagnetic nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Shealy, what I'm saying, I'm trying to share my experience in this broadcast classroom, that it's something you can't see, you can't touch it, you can't smell it, but it gives me an almost instantaneous headache. I would say within seconds. It's not instant, but it's darn close. And I get this kind of a foggy, cottony, dull headache, and it's the kind of thing that would sap creativity from me. It really
no question. Well, here's a place now where you really might want to use Air Bliss on all 13 points. It might make a big difference.
Yeah, and I will do that. I will do that. And I can do that. I can't do it right this second. But I just wanted to share with you that it's unbelievable. And then there's another thing I wanted to talk about. Well, let's start with this one. Dr. Shealy, what do you think the results are for the people who live in this community day in and day out?
Well, I think they're lucky to be alive, you know.
Yeah.
And I would bet that if you did a telomere measurement, you'd find all their telomeres shorter than average for their age.
Okay. Would you like to on your website, or you sent me a post about that? Would you like to share with us what you mean by telomeres?
Yeah, telomeres are the tips of your DNA. That is, the genetic code of your body has methods for reproducing itself. Every cell in your body dies within a maximum of 7 years. But that's healthy and okay as long as your telomeres are okay. We are programmed, on average, with good health habits to last about 100 years because they lose about 1% a year under good circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, people with poor circumstances, and we have many, many, many studies showing this, smoking, obesity, crummy food, all of those things shorten your telomeres faster.
Mm-hmm.
And 7 years ago, actually, in about, tomorrow, 7 years ago tomorrow, I began to look at ways of rejuvenating telomeres because obviously if we can keep them from shrinking, we will live healthier and longer. How long is not important, healthy is.
Mm-hmm.
And I have now personally gone 7 years as of tomorrow, and I last measured my telomeres in April, and my telomeres have grown 19.6% instead of shrinking 6.7% by the time I measure them. So basically, my telomeres, the tips of my DNA, are essentially 26% longer than if I had done everything. And I've had good health habits all my life, so it's not a change in that. And I've got really about 35 people right now who are doing the same thing. It is cumbersome to some extent. You have to have a mat on top of your bed or somewhere where you can lie on it for 30 minutes a day or night with a Tesla coil attached. But I'm now, in fact, I converted in April to using fire, earth, and crystal bliss. And I've got about 10 people now who are converting to that to see whether we can maintain and continue to improve the length of our telomeres by keeping those particular circuits healthy. And I believe we can, but it's going to take us another year to find out.
So, Dr. Shealy, how do you measure telomeres?
Well, we've been measuring them. There's only one accurate lab that I know of in this country. And actually, it's not even this country. It's in Canada, in Vancouver. It's called Repeat Diagnostics. So you draw blood and you sit it overnight, and then they measure the length of the telomeres in your granulocytes and your lymphocytes, the two major kinds of white blood cells. And so we know that, we've got dozens and dozens of measurements now, and know that that's a very accurate way. Now, just in the last month, there's been a lab that has started measuring them in saliva. So presumably these are the cells of the mucosa in your mouth. And I'm not going to know for a while whether it's as accurate. It's less than half the price, about a third the price, in fact, of the blood test. But if it works, we'll obviously convert eventually to using salivary telomere measurements.
Dr. Shealy, what does it cost to have this measurement taken?
Well, the blood test is $450.
Mm-hmm.
The salivary test currently is $139. So obviously, if it works, it's going to be a great saving.
So, Dr. Shealy, I'm thinking about what you're saying with this measurement. Now, if the telomeres are getting longer, that would indicate a longer life potential, correct?
That is correct, both as well as healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The two go together.
So longer and healthier. Okay. Now, what about if a person sees a decline in the length of telomeres? Would we be saying accurately that, geez, this person is going to have a shorter life expectancy? And if there's a trend,
unequivocally. Now, obviously, on a year-to-year basis, this is not going to happen. But I'm willing to talk about this at this point. As I said, I started 7 years ago. But in 2010, when my wife became ill with a terminally ill problem, my telomere, I had already grown quite a bit, but my telomeres dropped back to what I'd gained in the first 3 years during that stressful year. And now I've regained it. So a major trauma, and I've seen that in a few other people, a major trauma could certainly shorten them for a year or so. But if you return to your normal activities and good health habits, then they can recover again. And let's face it, the telomeres are a very accurate reflection, but there's also genetics. And for instance, in the case of my wife, her father, her uncle, and her grandmother on the father's side all had apparently a genetic predisposition to something called myelodysplasia, in which the bone marrow stops making blood adequately. And so that can morph into something more serious. And unfortunately, at this point, we don't know anything will stop some of those genetic things.
Absolutely fascinating, Dr. Shealy. So the idea is we can measure this for possibly if the salivary test works at $139 a year if we do it, and we can kind of watch the long-term health indications of our telomeres and determine if maybe we're going to live longer than the average. So is that what we're saying? Am I understanding this properly?
You've got it.
Okay.
Remember, My Fair Lady? I think he's got it.
You know, Dr. Shealy, I was sleeping last night, and you know, all things are relative. At the farm in Missouri, if we open the bedroom window, we can hear insects, you know, communicating with each other, making noises. I mean, insects making noises. You can hear grasshoppers and crickets, and you can hear the birds chirping, and that darn rooster that Judy Dollarheight and John Dollarheight gave us. You can hear him. Jeez. But anyway, what I'm saying is, you can hear all these animals. When we come back, I'd like to tell you the difference between where we don't use insecticides and insects and noises, and where insecticides and herbicides are used, the difference that I'm seeing. Dr. Norman Shealy, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. And we're talking about sounds that I hear at the farm in the Ozark, Missouri mountains, and I'm in the Fredericksburg area of Virginia. And Dr. Shealy, last night it was relatively quiet, and quiet is relative. And I didn't hear any bugs, I didn't hear any birds, I didn't hear any animal noises that I normally hear outside the windows of the farmhouse in the Ozark Mountains. I think we killed them all.
Well, you didn't, but the people around you did, yes.
Yeah,
well, there's no question.
Saying.
I mean, remember Rachel Carson before your time. But, you know, her book told it all many decades ago, The Silent Spring. Now, of course, I live on a farm also, and for the 31-plus years that we've been here, we have never used any of those herbicides or pesticides. Mm-hmm. However, I do think it's worth mentioning one that a caller on my regular radio show mentioned several weeks ago, because I like it very much. It is cedarcide, CEDARCIDE. It's really cedar oil in some form that apparently is totally safe for people and animals. And there is a place, you know, for trying to keep bugs out of your garden. Now, there I use primarily Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that is totally safe, as far as I can tell, for people, but it does help control harmful insects that destroy your garden. And so I use the dust, although you can make it into a spray, and it helps abundantly. And I've used that for well over 30 years. In the house, I tend to use now the cedar side, because I did have an invasion of big ants not long ago right into my office. They came in through a crack, a tiny little crack, just outside at the ceiling of the outside wall, and were eating the insulation all over my office. Well, I had to spray about 3 times to get them all, but that stopped. And so you can put it on a cloth and rub it on your dogs to get rid of fleas and ticks. I know what you do, but this works really well and simply, and I like the smell.
Dr. Shealy, you know, it reminds me of the cedar chests of the 1950s, the 1960s, probably even before that. And people would make these cedar chests and buy them to put their clothes in because moths didn't attack the clothes inside the cedar chest. And then there are cedar shavings that you could use, and cedar blocks of wood. And my son and Mrs. Finelli and I were working on a fence on the farm, and we had to pull out a bunch of posts, and they were put in the 1960s, fence posts, and they were made out of cedar. And you know what? Those posts are untreated, meaning they don't have any insecticides on them, any poisons. They're not coated with creosote or anything, and they last a long, long time. Cedar posts in the ground, direct contact with the moisture and the bacteria and the bugs, and they don't like it. None of those guys like those cedar posts, so they really do last a long time. So I think the way to go is naturally, if we can.
Well, obviously, and on our farm, almost, I would say, 90% of the posts are cedar from our own farm. And, of course, I've put cedar siding inside our closets, as well as having a couple of cedar chests for winter clothes.
And we used to use cedar shakes for siding of houses before it got too expensive, and we've replaced it with plastic, vinyl siding. But cedar shakes, cedar lapboard siding. It worked great. It didn't hold paint too well, but in terms of lasting for a long time, it certainly did.
Hey, choose your art.
Dr. Shealy, there is at the top of the hour, we heard a report about people getting sick eating greens. And I'd like to share with you what I've learned about a toxic salad, farm-packed salad greens, and how many people were sick recently, how many people were hospitalized, how many states were involved. It's unbelievable. Let's talk about that when we come back. Dr. Norman Shealy, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. You might not want to eat the same food after we're done. In the broadcast classroom with us, Dr. Shealy, what I was referring to just before the break is a toxic salad. And there are 372 reported incidents of people getting sick to the degree where they would report it to the government. This is 21 people have been hospitalized, and 16 states have been involved. And this happened last month. And it's cyclospora outbreak. And it's a stomach illness that's linked to a salad mix in Iowa. And here's where I'm going with this. This is not the first time, not the second time, not the third time that people have become ill by eating these salads that are pre-mixed. Now, some people believe that they're eating healthy food when they go to the store and they buy a bag of pre-cut, pre-mixed salad. But it appears that it can contain bacteria because it really hasn't been washed and cleaned as we would with a head of lettuce if we bought the head and peeled off the outer leaves and threw them away. Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts on on eating pre-cut, pre-mixed, pre-bagged salads.
Well, I don't buy them. So.
Yeah, we don't either. We don't either.
To me, it might be almost as bad as going to McDonald's. Basically, of course, anything you buy in the store, anything, really probably should be, before you use it, soaked in a weak mixture with some Nixol.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, recently I bought raspberries, and as you know, if you buy raspberries in the grocery store and leave them in the fridge about 2 days, they begin to mold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I soaked them 20 minutes or so, washed them off well. They kept for 8 days.
Wow.
Without mold. So you can actually, make those things a great deal safer if you're willing to go to the trouble. And it's not trouble if it keeps you healthy.
Well, Dr. Shealy, one of the things that I travel with is Nixol, Nixall. Class, this is not a commercial. This is an endorsement. I really like the Nixol product. It works for me when I have a tick or our animals get ticks on them or fleas because they're outside on the farm. I spray them with Nixol. If there are flies on the doormat coming into the kitchen from the veranda where our chickens like to hang out right by the back door because the flies are attracted to the chickens being there, a little bit of Nixol spray on it, and they disappear. And so, and we have an instructor who I've seen use Nixol as a very dilute solution. She will, and she's a medical professional. She will, if she's making a salad, a little bit of Nixol, probably at the most 10% dilute solution, add it to the washing, the water, the Berkey water that she washes her vegetables and fruits and so forth in, and lets them soak for a little bit, then rinses off the Nixol, and then she consumes it. So and that's what she makes for her family. So I agree with you, Dr. Shealy, and I do carry Nixol with me all the time. As a matter of fact, I even use it as a deodorant. And
well, yeah, interestingly, I did a very small pilot study with that a couple of years ago, and in 80% of people, it works fantastically. Mm-hmm. No irritation of the skin,
nope.
No smell.
Nope.
It just prevents the bacteria from growing in your armpits.
Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, if what I do, working on the farm, I do work up a sweat, so I can just lift up my shirt, couple more sprays of Nixol under my arms, and I'm good to go again.
Well, I mean, I like it because, of course, since we brought that up, I do think it's worth mentioning that 99.9% of all deodorants on the market are dangerous to your health also because they are loaded with aluminum, among other things. And those things, and one of the great errors in health food stores is they talk about this deodorant stone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, deodorant stone is plain old aluminum in some form. It is not any better. In fact, it may be worse than the bottle stuff. So don't get hooked into thinking those health food stones that they use for deodorants are good. A lot cheaper to use Nixol and safer. Dr.
Shealy, I may have worn out my welcome in many places here in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'll tell you why. Because I've seen it. I've seen these deodorant bars, and I'll say, "Hey, do you know what this has aluminum in it? Let's talk about this." Hey, let's talk about this wireless router that you have over here in the living room. Let's talk about this Mac computer that is all wireless, no wires other than power and keyboard and mouse. Let's talk about. Boy, look at those towers over there. I may never be invited back, but I'm so glad you mentioned the deodorants because that was something that I brought up, and but Dr. Shealy, so few people know about the dangers of aluminum. We used to cook. I know my mom used to cook spaghetti sauce. I know Mrs. Finelli's mother used to cook spaghetti sauce in these club aluminum pans, these big multi-quart saucepans, and our grandmothers used cast iron, but our parents used aluminum because it was the new cast iron, but lighter, and if you look at those pans that were used for cooking spaghetti sauce, they're all pitted. They're all pitted because of the acid of the spaghetti sauce, the tomato sauce, etching the inside of the pots. So we consumed that aluminum.
Well, I'm glad you brought that one up. So think about those drinks that come in aluminum cans.
Man, oh man, and
they talk about acid. Tomatoes, are weaklings compared to pop.
Okay, and there are many highway patrols, state troopers, and those kind of police types who carry a 6-pack of Coke in their trunk, so that when there's a bloody accident, they just pour open the cans, dump the Coke or the Pepsi or the cola drinks on the scene of the accident where there's all this blood and gore and guts, and it helps eat it and consume it so that it's not visible, for a long period of time. So yeah, we had someone come to the expo who said to me, "Hey, can you get me a ride over to the drugstore? I need some," and I forget what he said it was, a compound for a foot fungus. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's try some Nixol." And so instead of getting the whatever the brand name is for that foot fungus treatment, we used Nixol. Dr. Shealy, I believe it went away. Isn't that neat?
Well, that's right. I mean, Nixol is terrific for killing fungus.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned to him that you and I have talked about it on the air, and I said, I think Dr. Shealy would want you to try this. I wasn't practicing medicine. I was just repeating what I heard, and and I think we have a new convert for treating the foot fungus. And it's too bad it wasn't around a lot sooner, because I know a man who's now deceased who was in World War II. Actually, I know two of them, and they were in the jungle, and they got foot fungus, and the blistering and the bleeding, and there was really no treatment for it back in the 1960s. And these two men suffered decades with it, and it was, I guess it was kind of like a I can't remember the name of this. It was kind of like a psoriasis looking stuff. And
yeah, it gets pretty awful.
Yeah, and so do you think that had they had the access to Nixol, that they could have treated it with that? Probably, almost certainly. It would take a lot longer once it's gotten that bad, but still safe. I like safety. Yeah, Dr. Shealy, I was thinking. We were talking about. I mentioned police. And I was thinking about what I've been seeing here in the Fredericksburg area. I'm seeing very pretty women in their 30s, I'm guessing, late 20s, 30s, sometimes even 40s and 50s, and they are branded and tattooed and pierced. And I can't imagine why they would disfigure themselves this way. But they'll start right around near their neck and work their way down to their forearm with a tattoo on one side, asymmetrically. It absolutely looks horrible. I was at the library yesterday, and I wanted to say to this woman, "Wow, that's a really interesting tattoo. You mind if I take a picture of that?" And I didn't want to say, "Gosh, you've disfigured yourself beyond belief." But I do think that I have never seen a tattoo that improves somebody's appearance anywhere. I don't think it's possible. I think it is desecration of the temple. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen, actually, without alteration, I've never seen skin that didn't stretch over time. So, if someone had a tattoo that said "Mom," in 30 years it would be "Mom." It would stretch so much.
Well, it's just so ugly to me that I just try not to look at it.
Well, yeah. And so here's where I was going with that. Back in the 1960s, I know that the New Jersey State Police would not allow their officers to smoke on duty.
Right.
They could not smoke on duty because it was a sign of bad behavior. That's no longer the case. That's no longer the case. Now police are driving around in their cars smoking. They're smoking on the job. They're exhibiting bad behavior. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about bad behavior being displayed in a lot of places and the dangers of it. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. I'm Vincent Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. We're broadcasting remote. A few minutes ago, we were talking about this toxic salad and the outbreak, and I want to mention the states that the outbreak occurred in. Here are some of them: Iowa, Texas, Nebraska, Florida, Wisconsin, Illinois, New York City, Georgia, Missouri, Arkansas, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio. So this is a multi-state problem where the salad was found to be toxic in terms of bacteria. And a lot of people were sick. How many? At least 372, because that's the number of reported cases. So Iowa, Texas, Nebraska, Florida, Wisconsin, Illinois, New York, Georgia, Missouri, Arkansas, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio. And during the next break, I'll post on the website. I'll post this article on the website so you can read it for yourself, and it will appear at usaprepares.com. Dr. Norman Shealy and I were talking about bad behavior, and I believe it's now a centerpiece of modern society. Actresses, actors, they are exhibiting bad behavior. They're exhibiting suggestive attire. They are smoking. They're doing drugs, and they get arrested and arrested and arrested for this bad behavior. And I believe they are exhibiting this to the general detriment of society, because we look at these people as if they're special. Well, they are special. They're special because of their bad behavior. They're not special because because they're brighter than we are. They're actors. They're actors. And let me explain what I mean. I met a man years ago who was a superintendent of schools for the Commonwealth of Virginia. His son graduated college and got a job at one of those theme parks. And this was the years when they had Tom Cruise was in a movie and he was driving a race car. So they hired this man's son to be in that same kind of uniform, and they had a replica of that race car at this theme park. And he'd walk around with his helmet on, and he would just kind of wave at people, and he walked around and waved to people. And these young people came up to him and said, Tom Cruise, as if, that's really something special. And so the young man who graduated college, who was wearing this suit portraying Tom Cruise at the theme park, raised his helmet visor and he said, no, ma'am. Tom Cruise is an actor. I'm a race car driver. So there you have it. We have actors, and they're actors. They're not the real thing. They're actors. So, Dr. Shealy, are you concerned about the portrayal of bad behavior as acceptable in society?
Well, of course, I think it is. But, Vincent, the media is a great cause of bad behavior. They have pushed bad behavior to the top of the list, actually, for probably the last 90 or 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember that way back in the 40s and maybe later, great actors, Clark Gable and all of those, were pushing cigarette smoking in ads.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, too.
And And so now we have not only, the making them look like heroes or heroines, but we have the violence that they're pushing on the world. Mm-hmm. We don't need violence.
No, you're absolutely right. We do not need violence. And I am seeing more bad behavior in automobiles than I've ever seen before. Here in Fredericksburg, I was in traffic, and it was moving fine. And I put my signal on to change lanes, and because I was going to make a turn so I needed to change lanes. So I put my signal on to change lanes. The guy behind me, no way. Was I going to get in front of him? Are you kidding? No. And he was able to save himself maybe a second, maybe, by cutting me off, maybe. Dr. Norman Shealy and I are going to be back on the other side of this break and top of the hour news. And I'd like to talk about what happened when a man was driving a bus in New Jersey. He was using his cell phone. Absolute tragedy. Dr. Shealy, let's talk about distractions. Let's talk about cell phones. Let's talk about texting. And then let's talk about your latest newsletter. Dr. Norman Shealy, Vincent Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back after top of the hour news. Right, Dr. Shealy?
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? This is hour number 2 of the USAPrepares.com, broadcasting from Virginia, Fredericksburg, Virginia, remote from the farm. Class, at the top of the hour, you heard a news report about a man driving a bus. And this man driving a bus was in New Jersey, and he was using a cell phone. He was either texting or talking. Either way, he was distracted. He lost control of the bus. He hit trees, parked cars, a lamppost, ultimately a baby carriage, and he killed an 8-month-old baby. Dr. Shealy, may we talk about the effects of electromagnetic radiation on the brain? And let's say this person was talking on the cell phone. Can you really pay full attention to what you're doing if you're talking on a cell phone? Can you really be alert at the wheel driving and on a cell phone?
You always answer your own questions. The answer is no. In fact, there's a study recently reported that even talking on a phone, even if it's not up to your head, with a speakerphone, your ability to stay focused is markedly reduced. And, of course, we have the recent episode in Spain where the train was wrecked and a huge number of people killed because he was texting apparently on the phone. I mean, to me, the idea of texting while driving a car is beyond insanity.
Well, Dr. Shealy, let me share this with you. Mrs. Finelli will tell anyone who listens. All he does is talk. That's me. And she thinks that's what I do. And I can tell you this, when I'm on the telephone in the kitchen at the farmhouse, we have a 25-foot coiled cord. We do not have wireless, phones where we can carry them around and talk, in the yard, in the front yard, in the backyard, around the farm. They're all corded phones. But I can tell you this, that it is very easy to lose track of time when you're talking on the phone. I think you're absolutely right. Not only is the electromagnetic radiation a distraction, but just talking on the phone prevents you from paying full attention to everything else that's around you.
You bet. And, well, it's remarkable that people are so unbelievably stupid and crude, etc. I mean, to me, it's, at this point, even worse than smoking as a danger, because it's more dangerous to everybody around you, by far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these people are driving motorized missiles down the highway, and they are in complete control of them. They can slam down the accelerator, they can slam on the brakes, they can turn left, right, they can put their vehicle into reverse, bang into the people behind them, they can run along the sidewalks, drive through a park, they could even aim at a building and drive into it if they want to. And I think it should be criminal if you're found guilty of driving while on the cell phone or texting while driving. I mean, driving on using a phone when driving and texting when driving. Not because, I'm a libertarian, so I think freedoms are good. But I don't think you have the freedom to put other people in danger, like that man who was driving the train in Spain, and almost 100 people were killed. And this man driving a bus who, in New Jersey, who hit trees, parked cars. I mean, the parked cars weren't moving. They were parked. He ran the bus right into him. Obviously, he's not paying attention. So I think it's irresponsible to be doing that. And I think if we had some severe penalties for people who do it, they would learn. They would learn that, man, oh man, did you hear what happened to that driver, Joe? He was using a cell phone, and he's in jail for the next 10 years. I think if we had serious penalties, people would say, you know what, I'm not even going to think about doing that.
Well, I totally agree. And, it's happening slowly, as most things do in society. But it is important to remind people that it is dangerous not only to everybody else, but to your own health and life.
Mm-hmm. And those in your vehicle. So the medical question that I have for you, Dr. Shealy, regarding this, the child is dead. The bus driver had to be injured. I mean, I saw an image of the bus. The question that I have relates to post-traumatic stress disorder. And here's where that comes from. The mother of that 8-year-old, who obviously loved that 8-year-old child, is in the hospital. She's been in the hospital for a couple days now. And she has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Obviously, she's grieving. What does a person do about post-traumatic stress syndrome?
Well, it's interesting. The sooner it is properly treated, the better. And certainly there's no drug in the world that's of any value whatsoever. Actually, if I could, I would put Air Bliss on her twice a day. I have one of my favorite all-time emails is from a veteran who suffered for 10 years from post-traumatic stress disorder. The first night he applied Air Bliss, he slept through the night without a nightmare. It soon will be 1 year that he is free of post-traumatic stress disorder. So if it was treated early especially, it could help. It doesn't mean that you're not going to grieve. It just means you're not in the most severe stages of it. Okay,
and is PSTD something that, I don't know if the term is outgrow, but with time, can it be completely removed, or is there always going to be some residual of that event coming back to haunt the person?
There's a great difference between being completely removed and not being traumatized over and over and over again by it, playing the broken record, so-called, of something bad that's happened. It's never going to go away, but it shouldn't ultimately control your life. And that's what can happen with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this is not talked about by most people, but to me, virtually all depression is the result of some kind of post-traumatic stress. It's just a question of degree.
Dr. Shealy, that bears repeating. Virtually all depression is a result of some kind of traumatic stress?
You bet.
Okay.
And this takes us to, remember, I have worked with 30,000 depressed people. And in virtually all of them, it began in childhood, early childhood. And so it is just a major problem. If the child is abused or abandoned, not loved, feels abused or abandoned, that leads to depression, and if they were abused, also anger.
So that old saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is not true.
That's absolutely nonsense, especially in young children. Now, a well-adjusted person who had a happy childhood, they can brush it off. But a person that are unhappy in childhood, who's never felt good self-esteem to start with, they can't brush it off. It hurts.
So when people make fun of skinny people, fat people, redheads, freckles, someone with let's say, a limp, all those things can hurt a person for their entire lives. Is that right?
You bet. And let's face it, children, who are not extremely well nurtured are very easily bruised. And bullies and other idiots in the environment can make their entire life traumatic.
So Dr. Shealy, is there a process that you would prescribe for the general class who may be feeling some of that? Let's say obese. Let's say in addition to trying to lose that weight. Let's say it's a skinny person. Let's say it's a freckled person that's been picked on. Someone maybe who has, a buck tooth or two. Whatever it is that's a little different from everybody else. What do we do? What is the prescription? Well,
obviously, they need nurturing, and they can't always get it from the environment or from a psychiatrist. God knows I wouldn't go to a psychiatrist to save my life. I think 99% of psychiatrists are worse than the pharmacomafia. But autogenic training is one way. It's an old thing. It's been around 101 years. It is a self-hypnosis, self-regulating tool that can be tremendously helpful. But it takes time. A minimum of 6 to 12 weeks of daily practice can help immensely. Air bliss. Along with that, I would say, if somehow the people have the reserves, if you will, the motivation, the energy to do it, those two things alone would take care of at least 80% of them. And so safe, so simple.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, if someone has this concern, may they contact you through your website or through your email? And is that something they can do?
Well, they can. Now, remember, if they overwhelm me, it may take me sometimes some days to get back to it. But I do answer all my own email.
Okay. So, class, if you plan on actually applying Dr. Shealy's recommendations and doing what he recommends, you can contact him through his website, normshealy.com, NormShealy.com. Norm is in NormanShealy.com. Dr. Shealy and I are going to be right back. And Dr. Shealy has a post, Youthful Aging by C. Norman Shealy, MD, PhD, Native American medicine man. We'll be right back and we'll talk about youthful aging with Dr. Norman Shealy. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. And on his website, there's a post that talks about aging, and Youthful Aging by Dr. Norman Shealy. It's on our website also. So if you want to go to usaprepares.com, usaprepares.com, Youthful Aging. Now, Dr. Shealy has been around for a little over 8 decades. And Dr. Shealy has more energy than most people I know. So I believe he practices what he preaches. Dr. Shealy, let's talk about youthful aging. What would you like to share with us?
Well, obviously, the most important thing is what I would call common sense. Mm-hmm. But as my father said many years ago, common sense is the uncommon commodity.
Yeah, he's right.
I mean, you can't do anything about stupidity. And to me, stupid means ignoring obvious facts. So we start with breathing. You got to breathe, and ideally as fresh air as you can get. That's something you get on your farm. It's something I get on my farm in Missouri. It's about as good air as you're going to get. Number two, you've got to eat real food. I mean, real food is food that has not been, quote, highly processed. Processed means it's had junk, chemical, and other stuff added to it or changed in it. Mm-hmm. Number three, you move as much as possible. I mean, ideally, some kind of modest movement, a minimum of an hour a day. Mm-hmm. Of course, you don't smoke. That's crazy. You don't drink excessively, if at all, alcohol, and you sleep, ideally 8 hours every night. Now, those are the basics. With those, you are likely to live an average of 100 years. That's all. That's all it takes. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, genetics plays a part in it, but you do the best you can. And beyond that, there are certain things that we can do, and we have demonstrated that you can help your cells and the genes, the gene control mechanism, the DNA, improve by being 30 minutes a day on a sort of concentrated sun energy, solar homeopathy, I sometimes call it, where you're exposed to human DNA frequency of 54 to 78 billion cycles per second, 30 minutes a day. Now, it's going to take me another 9 or 12 or 10 months to find out whether putting the bliss oils, the fire, earth, and crystal oils on the points of each of those rings, which takes a minute and a half a day, is going to do the same thing as being exposed to the solar homeopathy or the rejuvenatrix. I hope it will, because it's so simple, cost-effective, and other such things. But the most important thing is just living a healthy, common-sense life. Now, this puts us on the verge, however, of another one that you may not have put up yet, but I hope you will. Modern medicine. Modern medicine is about an editorial. Well, it's actually a journal article that's going to be published in August in the Mayo Clinic Proceedings. And they studied for 10 years all the articles published in our most prestigious journal, the New England Journal of Medicine. And they came to the conclusion that of all this stuff that was being talked about in modern medicine, 38% of it was fairly good. They didn't even say good, fairly good. Mm-hmm. 40% was useless or bad. Now that reminds me of an editorial that Franz Engelfinger, the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, himself wrote back in 1979. It was reviewing a book called The Role of Medicine by Thomas McEwen, and we'll come back to that after the break.
Dr. Norman Shealy, USAPrepares.com. I'm going to post his article, Medicine Today, during the commercial break. I'm going to post it, and you'll be able to see it right now. Dr. Norman Shealy, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We will be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and we're talking about modern medicine. Has medicine changed over the years? Dr. Shealy, I just posted your article on the website, Modern Medicine. Why don't we talk more about that? It's absolutely fascinating, because I remember back in the 1950s, we thought that we had hit, the pinnacle of modern medicine, and out of that came drugs for women to lose weight, and they were accelerants. It made these women hyperactive, and they became addicted to them. So let's talk about modern medicine.
High blood pressure, by the way, too, among other things.
Yeah, and they used to call them diet pills, Dr. Shealy. Diet pills.
Interestingly, one of my favorite quotes of all time was by the editor of the New England Journal back in 1979, Franz Engelfinger. He was reviewing a book called The Role of Medicine by Thomas McEwen. And he said, let us assume that 80% of problems that people have do not need to see a physician or, clear up spontaneously. 11% are miraculously improved. Unfortunately, 10% are made worse. Thus, we wind up barely on the positive side of zero. So what he was saying is that it's a toss-up as to harm versus help with modern surgery. And this article that's coming out soon in the Mayo Clinic Proceedings says virtually the same thing. In fact, they say we're 2% on the bad side of zero. And so if we look back through the history of medicine, we've done some things right. And if we could just keep people who don't need drugs or surgery from getting them, we would be in great shape. We actually might have an 11% major cure rate with modern medicine and surgery. But if we look at any major drug of the current medical system, whether it is statin drugs for hypertension, antidepressant drugs for depression, or antihypertensive drugs for high blood pressure, actually, not one of them is better than 50% good. Not a single one. And they cause harm. In fact, with antidepressants, the single best publication is 42%, but there's a 25% complication rate, which means that you have a greater complication rate than you do help rate, 8% worse than help. And so it requires great common sense and flipping a coin and luck when someone doesn't know medicine approaches, a physician day. Now, I have to say, a trauma, an acute trauma, we're pretty good. We're actually very good in helping people who've had major accidents or minor or moderate accidents. But when it comes to chronic disease, we're not any better off now than we were 300 years ago.
Dr. Shealy, I'm sitting here stunned, but I believe I heard you just say, if I heard it correctly, antidepressants, 8% are worse off when people take them. So are we saying that what a person prescribing, a doctor prescribing an antidepressant could accurately say is, I'll tell you what, take these, and chances are you're going to be 8% worse after you take them.
Well, if you're lucky, that's all right. And, of course, you may be dead because the suicide rate is markedly increased at all ages in people who take antidepressant drugs.
Dr. Shealy, I am broadcasting remotely from probably the suicide capital of the country. Seriously. Virginia, I read a couple of weeks ago that Virginia is the number one suicide state in the Union. It's number one. Yeah. And I wonder if that's because of Washington, D.C., or because I happen to be in a community that's a couple hours away by commute to Washington. And this would be the suburbs of Washington, if you will. A lot of people
Right.
live here. And the neighborhood where I'm broadcasting from, the FBI lives here, the CIA, the NSA, make work type people live here. And the houses are probably $350,000. Very, very nice neighborhood. But I imagine these people's livelihoods are in jeopardy every second. So the stress level must be really, really high here. I wouldn't want to live like this with all the electromagnetic radiation, with all the pollution. I would bet that if 50% of the area's land is not paved with a parking lot or a road or a curb or something, that would be a lot. I mean, if 50% were not paved. So it's changed. This part of Virginia has changed over the last 25 years. I don't think I'd be happy here. But you're talking about depression, and I believe that there are a lot of people who are really not happy who live here. I believe that there's a set of people who are fantastically wealthy and don't have to worry about much, and then there are those who are living day to day just trying to make the payments on their cars and their houses, and it must be an awful predicament to be in, and I can see why suicides would be so high. And what I read, Dr. Shealy, was that the reason that there are so many suicides in Virginia is because of failed relationships. I guess that would be marriages, or not marriages, people living together and relationships outside of marriage, and loss of jobs. Those two things are driving the suicide rate to number one in the United States. Your thoughts, Dr. Shealy?
Well, that's phenomenally important, Vince. And, I mean, let's face it, divorce is 50% of people throughout the country. Mm-hmm. And so if Virginia is higher than that, that is really phenomenally, serious. Mm-hmm. And of course, divorce when children are within the first 7 years of life, often leads to that child having lifelong depression. So it's a serious problem. And it's a problem of unhappiness, depression, dissatisfaction with life, any way you look at it.
Dr. Shealy, as I look around people whom I've met, you think, can't be 50% divorced. It's impossible. But it's true. I mean, the people who I've met, I believe that 50% is the right number. Maybe it might be even more than that. When people ask me how long I've been married, or Mrs. Finelli, they're shocked. I'm sure they would be shocked at you and some of the other instructors that we have. But not all the instructors have been married one time. Some have been married multiple times or are currently divorced. And no one, I've never met a person who said, "Oh yeah, I'm happily divorced."
Oh my, yes, indeed.
I mean, some guys are glad to be, removed from their former spouse, but they're not happily divorced, and they're certainly not better off financially. It takes a toll on the children, and the wallet, and the emotions, everything, even the extended families, even the friends are involved. It's horrible. I met a person here. I've met all kinds of interesting people, and Mrs. Finelli thinks I'm kind of nuts because I wander off and I talk to people and I say, "Hey, how's it going?" And I just meet these strangers. And I met.
Are you divorced yet?
And I met this young man at the library, and he was in the video section. He was looking at the Three Stooges. So and he's about 10 years old, and I'm surprised that his mother didn't run over and rescue him from me and say, get away from that guy. He's weird. But, we were talking about the Three Stooges, and I just started talking to this young man, and we had a really interesting chat, and we talked about, neat videos to watch, and I mentioned 1984 because he was a really bright young man. Anyway, he was one of the people I met, but I met a nurse in my travels here, and I was talking to her, and I said, what do you think about fluoride? Dr. Shealy, here we have a nurse, no clue. Let me say it a different way. No clue that fluoride is a poison. How can that be? How can a person wear a uniform and be employed in a medical institution somewhere, I don't know where she works, but somewhere, and not understand that fluoride is deadly? How can that be?
Well, as my professor of medicine said, and again, now we're going back over 60 years,
mm-hmm.
I am amazed at people who have eyes and see not and ears and hear not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is that a lot of people don't pay attention. They probably are glued to their texting or to the television where you will not get correct information about much of anything.
Since you mentioned television, you don't watch television and I don't watch television, but some of the people who I've met and I visited, TVs are on in the background all the time. It's like, even when they're sleeping, I look out the window and walk around in the evening and I see TVs on when, people should be sleeping. And I don't get it. I guess some people think that they can fall asleep to the TV, but I don't think it's good, and I'd love to hear your opinion. Where I'm going with this is I am hearing vulgarity on regular television that I just can't believe. And even the bleeping out of vulgarity. You hear the first syllable of profanity and it's bleep. I mean, why do they even allow that? It's on cooking shows. It's on competitive type reality shows. It's ridiculous. It needs to be removed from the air. We need to have decency. Dr. Shealy, your thoughts?
Well, I agree totally. In fact, I think that if television were restricted to 15 minutes...
That matters, absolutely, and it doesn't get any better than Dr. Norman Shealy, brain surgeon, author, broadcaster, farmer, PhD ×3. Dr. Shealy, I'm so lucky. I'm fortunate. I received an email from Gail McGovern. She's the president and CEO of American Red Cross. She tells me that with my donation, I can help her get there. They're a little short of their goal of $125,000, but my donation can help. Let me know if you'd want me to forward this to you, Dr. Shealy.
The Red Cross is not on my list of good organizations.
I know. And I think when Elizabeth Dole was the CEO or running it, I think she was only earning about maybe $660,000 a year, which seems like a lot to be running up a volunteer organization. So, Dr.
That's
Shealy,
one of the reasons the Red Cross is not anywhere on my list. I wouldn't give them 10 cents.
Well,
the Salvation Army is one of the few goodies.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the husband and wife team that run the Salvation Army that headed up, I believe that their compensation is around $50,000 for both of them, which would probably put them below the poverty line if you were to apply. Seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dr. Shealy, you mentioned television going into the previous break. Were you saying restrict TV to 15 minutes a day?
30 minutes a day for the Rejuvenatrix.
Okay.
But it could be at night while you're sleeping even.
Okay, so use the Rejuvenatrix and not television. So you don't really like television?
No. I mean, I think the world would be far better off without it.
Mm-hmm.
I like radio.
Oh, radio is the theater of the mind. And that was a question I wanted to ask you, Dr. Shealy. When I was younger, in my early teens, my dad put an AM radio next to my on my nightstand. He said, just try this. Just listen to, and that was the beginning of talk radio, Long John Nebel, Brad Crandall, and people talking throughout the night. And he said, you might learn something. Even though you're asleep, you might learn some things. What do you think about doing that? Is that something that you would recommend, or do we absolutely need peace and quiet?
No, sorry, on that one I can't.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I wouldn't even want it on, because there's a study done years ago showing that, for instance, even though you might accommodate sleep through noise,
mm-hmm.
it still disturbs your EEG. For instance, if you look up all night to an electroencephalogram,
mm-hmm.
every time there's a noise, it changes your EEG, so it means you're not getting optimal sleep. Secondly, I wouldn't want that radio within 6 or 8 feet of my head anyway,
mm-hmm.
because the electromagnetic, speaking of stuff we talked about earlier,
sure.
the electromagnetic contamination from even a clock, I don't want within 6 or 8 feet of my head,
mm-hmm.
because it can disturb your EEG, and that means it's disturbing your brain.
Mm-hmm. Well, since being married to Mrs. Finelli, she would discourage listening to radio, and for a long time now, we have not listened to the radio at night. So we do exactly what you're recommending. But when I was younger, my dad said, you might learn something, and maybe it's true. Maybe I don't know.
There is evidence of sleep learning, but I don't think it's worth the interruption of your sleep.
Okay. So there you have it, class. Dr. Shealy, I understand that you might be traveling and you might be in an airplane sometime in the near future. Do you have any recommendations for those who travel, especially considering the radiation that is in the atmosphere from Fukushima right now? What do we do to protect ourselves?
Well, everybody on the face of the earth should be taking iodoral today, 12.5 milligrams every day of your life, as long as we're at any threat of radiation. That's just a starter.
Okay. So when we come back, Dr. Shealy, when you're on with us next, should we talk more about radiation and the threats and what we should do about it?
You bet. A great thing to...
Dr. Shealy, be careful.
To be prepared.
Yep. Be careful in your travels. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com class. Iodoral, 12.5 milligrams per day, recommended by Dr. Shealy. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you. Thanks so much, Dr. Shealy.